Dani is talking to us about a fork in the road. You've got to speak slowly and clearly on this one, because we could get ourselves into trouble about this road, because we know most of our roads, Dani, aren't fantastic. And now you're going to put a fork in the road, and that's now we've got potholes and now a fork. I'm confused. But help, please, give us a sense of the fork in the road in terms of where you see South Africa's property sector at the moment.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, I'm really excited about today, as you guys have shared. Obviously, we're going to be focusing on the community management in this session. You've already kind of set the stage that the future looks bright. But like our topic says, there is a fork in this road. And the big question really is, are we positioned for the future? You make me think, whether we should buy Ferraris that is really low, or should we buy, some SUV that can deal with what we have in South Africa. But yeah, that's just the thought. So I think when I was in school, I never really enjoyed history. But I love your quote, Bruce. Somewhere I read it. You said, "You understand the present only if you understand the past, and understanding both allows you to shape the future." So in this session...
That is so good. Say it again, sorry. Did I say that?
You said that. Apparently, I read it on one of your blogs. So I'll say it again because it's important. You understand the present only if you understand the past. And understanding both allows you to shape the future. And I think in this session, we want to unpack this a bit. We want to understand the past a bit better, because we did say that there's this, it looks like a bright future ahead, all right? Meaning there's crime and everybody wants to live in communities. So it feels positive. But we need to understand the past, where we come from. We need to understand the present. And I think if we get those two understandings, then we can make informed decisions about the future and position ourselves for this future. So I'm going to unpack a couple of slides just to create some platform, and then we're obviously looking forward to hear from the panelists. So the first thing that we need to, let me just get the slides going. There we go. So the first thing we need to understand is industry professionalization. What does it take for any industry to professionalize? And on this slide, we basically want to outline the steps. So the first step is there's a new concept. I'm going to run quite quickly through them. There's a new concept, let's call it sectional title and HOAs communities being established. There's new legislation obviously coming into play at that point in time. And then obviously new services that need to be created. But at this point in time, it's really small scale business, all right? There's not many people involved. And I think the big thing to consider is that I think the customer expectation at this point in time is not that high, just due to the fact that it's kind of unknown to many people out there. And because of the fact that it's not on large scale, you use generic tools to get the job done at this point in time. The next step is the concept gets accepted and it becomes acceptable, meaning, successful in the industry. It scales dramatically, and obviously more and more people get involved. Because more people get involved, all right, the next step is obviously regulation and professional bodies that needs to be put in place just to create standards and say how this is going to work, just because there's so many people, in the space. And now, because of standards that have been created and obvious regulation and laws that's coming into place, now qualifications and education starts to play a really big role because this now becomes a proper professional industry. And it's not always in this particular order, but one of the great next steps, which is critical for any industry to professionalize, is when niche service providers or purpose-built service providers and tools, come into the market. This typically happens after regulation, because then it's safe for big investment to basically come into the market. And if we've completed these steps, then we can get to a point where it is a professional and lucrative industry. Now, the slide does give this misleading perception that with each step, things just gets better and better. and that's not entirely, true in practice. So I want to go to the next slide and try and unpack this specific phenomenon. So this is basically the same slide as the previous one. We have just summarized the 10 steps into 5 phases, all right? The green line there shows us the growth of the industry in units, and it's really small on my screen, but there's about 60,000 new units added to the community management industry daily. All right, so that's really exciting to see. And then we've got this median line, which basically is showing the viability of a business during these 5 phases. All right, so if you're above the line, obviously it's viable, the business is making profit, and yes, it's good business. If you're below the line, then it's struggling and yeah, probably not sustainable. So let's look at how the phases actually impact in practice. This is more or less how it looks, all right? I'm just going to add a couple of events, all right? And I'm just going to click through them for everybody's interest, all right? And then I'll unpack a couple of topics. So we can see this is now specifically property management events, major events that happened over time, all right, in the different phases. So initially, if you look at the green phase, there's this new concept, all right. There's this fair value exchange, because of the fact that it's a new concept, the client expectations is low, all right. Then we move to the second phase, and volumes do start to increase, but client expectations still remain on the lower end. And that is why business viability starts to increase a little. We are ever still using generic and possibly inefficient tools to deliver the services. Then once the industry scales properly, client expectations starts to increase, all right? And we saw there that there's different legislation that progressed at those times. That is now phase 3 there. So in reality, the effort to get the job done has increased, but the help or the assistance with niche services, niche tools have not necessarily yet arrived. All right. And again, it further pushes it down. The fourth stage feels like a double blow, because now the much needed regulatory bodies are added, progressive legislation emerges, professional bodies are established that has that need to kind of standardize processes. And all of this is absolutely necessary. And I think another key thing to understand, it is necessary and it adds value to the property manager. But at this point in time, it feels like red tape, and it is additional burdens that is placed on the property manager. And then obviously the last phase there is when we all kind of get used to it and we get stuck in, I should say, in that fourth phase as well. Purpose-built tools and purpose-built services are also now starting to emerge, which is kind of like a light at the end of the tunnel. So now to further explain the dip, this dip that we see, that business is really not viable, and the phase where we're currently in, there's 2 graphs that we need to unpack. And that is the first one, the debt management graph. The interesting thing here is we look at this, the debt per unit is absolutely incredible. If you take Joburg, Pretoria, and Durban, per unit, the debt is more than, well, close to 6,000 Rand in Durban, close to 7,000 Rand in Pretoria, and close to 8,000 Rand per unit in Joburg. Now, one of the core functions of a managing agent is to manage the cash flow of a community. Now, we also see that in the last 2 to 3 years, the debt has increased, and this is by a minimum of 20%. I know many managing agents, their particular book have grown by much more. But yeah, it's grown immensely. And again, that adds to the effort that goes into managing these communities. Now, the increasing debt is one problem, but an even greater problem is the fact that only 30% of managing agents charge for the debt management service today. So there's a 70% portion of managing agents that work harder and harder. The effort to deliver their services goes up and up, but they are not compensated for this particular effort. Now, the unfortunate end result is a less than professional service and possibly an unsustainable business. So let's look at the effort versus compensation graph to further unpack where we are today. Sorry, there we see the 20% increase. Okay, so this is the effort versus compensation. It's over the last 10 years. And we can see per region what has been charged on average. We can see that over time, the effort has increased a lot. All right, so let's just unpack a couple of interesting things here. Let me add all of the animations for everybody, just kind of go through them properly. So let's unpack a couple of the facts here. So firstly, we can see, again, the average compensation. The average increase, interestingly enough, the average increase in compensation over the past 10 years was 4% per annum. The inflation during the same period was 5.06 per annum. So in real terms, managing agents are earning 10% less than what we were earning in 2012. Then we see the effort to deliver the services has increased dramatically. Regulation, progressive legislation. We all felt, the impact of additional communication channels like WhatsApp and all of these things. Just generally, client demand did go up dramatically. And then clearly the average price per unit has not kept up with the real effort it takes to deliver the services that we need to deliver. And then probably the most important and interesting stat of all is looking at the growth of the two different segments. 20% of the market gets compensated in line with the effort. And then 80% of the market gets compensated on the average fees. And then the 20% market in 2022 has grown by 32% compared to the 12% growth of those earning in the lower compensation bracket. All right, so the positive thing, I should say, that we can derive from this is that both are growing. That's amazing. And I think it's testament to just really a very fast and growing industry. But the one is growing arguably non-profitably or, just barely surviving. And the other one is really running a profitable business, able to deliver great services. And Bruce, this is really what brings us to that fork in the road. I think the question, and I can't wait to hear from the panelists, the question is, will industry and can industry recognize their value and take the high road, make the relevant changes and charge in line with effort to deliver that professional service and enjoy the benefits of this growing business? Or will they take the low road and fight the margins at the risk of running an unsustainable and unprofitable business? So Bruce, with that as intro, excited to hear from the panelists. Let me just stop sharing here to hear from the panelists in this regard.
Donnie, thank you very much indeed. Let's get to the panelists. And as I mentioned your name, Pearl Skeltema, you can bring yourself to the foreground. I would like to see Pearl. We'd like to see also Marina Constas. We'd like to see Vita Wilkins and Opa Baloy as well. Let's get you all to the foreground. There's Marina, there's Vita. We don't have Pearl playing with us today. Opa was here a moment ago.
There you go.
There we go, Pearl, because we need you first, because that's the order I have you in.
Okay.
And Opa, when you are ready, if you could reveal yourself, that would be awesome. But Pearl, you've been, I find this quite awkward when people say, oh, an industry veteran, 30 years, and you go, well, she must have started work when she was 7. But talk to us about 30 years in property management, please. Give us a sense of what you've learned and leading up to this fork in the road that Dani has expressed so very, very clearly.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. Actually, Dani and Johan brought back many memories. When our company was started in 1982, things were much different. There were no technology available, and I can remember those nights we had to copy, actually carbon copy still, not a copy machine, statements from the previous month and do everything by hand and send it out in time. And things have changed quite a bit. But
did you have a Roneo machine?
I did. I did. I did.
Most people don't know what a Roneo machine is. I remember them used in primary school. It looked like a butter churn, and you had to handle around.
Yeah.
It was like trying to start a 1920s motor car, and it would put out sheets of badly printed paper. Anyway, that was what you were dealing with, right?
All right. So things were definitely done rather different. And sometimes I wonder whether I don't long for those good old days in comparison.
Oh, look, we've lost Pearl. Pearl doesn't want to talk about modern technology. Her signal has dropped. We've lost her. No, Pearl, we don't long for the good old days. We're looking to the future and how wonderful the future is going to be.
Okay, let me put on the different hat then. But yeah, what I found in the past was we knew much more than our clients. Nowadays, our clients are challenging us, and that keeps us on our toes. So it does become more difficult, and it's absolutely essential that we do need these tools that can equip us to deliver a better service and to get that connection with our clients, to place that trust in us that we can deliver on what they want.
No, it's absolutely critical. I mean, the role of the community manager then is a really critical one, isn't it, Pearl?
Correct. No, that is where the trust basis starts. So if there's not a relationship between the client and the service provider, very little can actually be done. That's where it all starts. So the portfolio manager or the community scheme manager is the one that needs these tools to provide the necessary service.
Okay, good. Marina, you are a sectional title legal expert. You've been doing this for not as many years as Pearl, but you've got plenty of experience. For 17 years, you've been doing that. You have written books. You are an author on your subject matter, and that's very good as well. In terms of professionalization of this industry and in terms of meeting the increasing demands, as Pearl so nicely puts it, where people are pushing back and asking questions, and it's no longer the top-down sort of drip feeding when you're ready. Professionalizing and really making an impact is absolutely critical. And again, not everybody can know everything anymore. I don't think. It's become increasingly complicated. How are you coping?
Well, I think it feels like I've been back at university for the last couple of years now as well, studying and making sure that I'm at the forefront of my industry. It is pretty tough. But, you know, Bruce, the impact of all this legislation has really simply brought us back up to speed with the rest of the world. And in fact, and I know maybe some managing agents won't appreciate this, but we've been on quite a great holiday for the last 28 years, particularly the 28 years when the Sectional Titles Act in 1986 was promulgated. And you know, nothing happened apart from a couple of amendments that we needed to catch up on. So I think the impact has been huge on the sectional title industry. In fairness, our act is pretty young. So we've got, the Act was in 1971. Our Act came into being and was made effective in 1973. And that had a huge impact because all of a sudden, you've got a situation now where people can own a piece of a building. I mean, that was impossible. That was unheard of. So that was your biggest impact from the beginning of the legislation. As I said, then you had the 1986 Act. It was in place for 28 years with no apparent movement. And then we looked at the 2016 the Act becoming effective. It was promulgated in 2011, became effective. We had the Community Scheme Ombuds Service Act. So all of a sudden, all this is conspiring to make everybody sit up and say, right, do you have your ducks in a row? And managing agents who used to moan and groan as well at all the non functions and National Association of Managing Agent Functions I used to speak at. And perhaps I came across with quite little sympathy because this is where we have to be. We have to protect asset value. So whilst it's so important that the value of the property manager is considered, and I think this is what WeconnectU are all about in terms of pushing forward the property manager, professionalizing the role of the property manager. The asset value cannot be, sort of underestimated. Your asset value is incredibly important. I see it with buildings all the time, where there's no regulation, there's no robust kind of approach by trustees to stick to the law. You get a deterioration in the asset value. So these acts are not guidelines. At the coast, Bruce, I think they think they're guidelines because you've got a lot of cowboys at the coast. But these acts are prescriptive. They're not guidelines. And I personally, I must say, I'm very happy about that. And I think it's where we're supposed to be positioned.
An unsympathetic lawyer, Marina. You surprise me. You shock me. You guys.
I love her.
She's so tough. She's so tough. Vita, at the University of Pretoria. Talk to me, please, about how things are looking from your perspective, please. Vita Wilkins, this morning from Pretoria. She's not at the coast, so she follows rules. They're not guidelines. They're not suggestions. Rules is rules in Pretoria.
Just to add to what Marina says, I'm unfortunately also an unsympathetic lawyer in my other life. And the laws are rules. Where I want to come in, because my expertise actually as a panelist today lies in what to do to professionalize the business or the industry, what we especially deem to be the community scheme industry. And it's about, we've touched on various themes today to connect, the silver lining, all of those things. And the bottom line in the end, to add value, is what do we need to do to make the community scheme manager the smartest person in the room? And secondly, to have that person be perceived as the smartest person in the room, because that is then where we start to add real value to community scheme management. And the question then leads to what is the purpose or the role of professionalization, regulation, and for that purposes then the creating of a new profession. And that's where we want to end up. We want to be in a position where we professionalize the industry by creating a new profession called, for lack of having anything else, a community scheme manager. And how do we do that? We do that through our professional body. Professional bodies is an interesting concept because a professional body can either be regulatory, like your councils, like the PPRA, which is the Professional Property Professional Regulatory Authority. The Property Practitioners Act is the foundation for that council, the Council for Quantity Surveyors, EXA for engineers, all of that. That's your regulatory bodies. But you also have voluntary bodies that plays a very important role in regulation of industries. And most professions actually started out as voluntary bodies where there was if you talk about the guilds many 100 years ago, that started with people doing the same thing, coming together and say that we need to start formalizing what we do. We must protect our knowledge. We must put ourselves out there as people with particular knowledge. And all of that, most of our professions in this country actually started with voluntary organizations, where they came together and they said, we are like-minded people and we need to get our profession organized. And if you take the estate agents as an example, they started, I made my notes, they only became a recognized body in 1976, after for many years being a voluntary organization and lobbying to become a professional body. Now, why do I hammer on professional bodies? Because that's where your critical mass lies. Those are the people that goes to the statutory bodies and say, listen here, we've evolved. We want our own qualification. We want our own designation. We want to create career paths for people. And that is, in my mind, one of the important aspects to creating value in our industry is that professionalization process from the point of view of supporting a professional body, getting involved with the professional body, because the professional body does the lobbying, the qualification is developed, it's formally registered with SAQA and all those issuing bodies. And at the end, that is what is going to make our community scheme manager the smartest person in the room, which brings us to adding value to what we are busy with. And the smarter the person is, the more that person will understand the value of tech. At the university, I'm at construction economics, so we are very much involved with property tech in management and so forth. And the smartest person in the room is this person that will understand how tech and management skills are going to improve you and make you move forward much faster than the one who actually ignores it.
No, I've got you on that one, Vita. I mean, when we look at it, you say you need to be the smartest person in the room. There's a saying, and it's used by CEOs everywhere. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You need to go and be challenged, unless you're a property manager, in which case you do need to be the smartest person in the room. Opa Baloy in Polokwane this morning. It's good to see that you've got electricity in Polokwane, Opa. You need to talk to us about the value of the managing agent, please. And in terms of how you would describe the value of the managing agent. This is the linchpin that makes or breaks the success of an entire scheme, the happiness of the members, and whether or not they're compliant, legal, and in keeping the lawyers like Marina and Vita happy.
Thank you very much, Bruce, and my colleagues and everyone. Thank you very much. Indeed, this is quite critical. The property management within the sectional title scheme is very critical, and to have the right managers, because as my colleagues has indicated that the environment where we are operating in now is very highly regulated, and there is quite a number of challenges. And you said yourself, Bruce, that it's more or less impossible nowadays to learn everything. So meaning that we need people who are good at what they do and have necessary skills. So I would say, if one has to understand that actually this sectional titles scheme properties, they are very much interesting because they also close the gap of, you know, the past. It was very difficult for people to own properties in the past, and they were expensive. But now the fact that now people at least are given an opportunity to own a section, which means that, and in those sections, remember, we talk about the lifestyle, a home of someone. We talk about somebody investing, and we are talking about somebody who want to pass the legacy to the generation that is coming after that person. So one will say a managing agent at this point in time is very, very important for them to know the rules of the game, and not also to be seeking for money, but to also deliver. Because like you're saying, if you love the country, if you love to us going forward. You know that this is also assisting us on the backlog that we are still having in terms of transformation of the land. So in other words, the space itself is also contributing positively towards that. So that's why I would say it's and also if you, Bruce, you look at this thing of sectional title scheme, the first sectional title scheme of 2011 in terms of trustees. Trustees are the members who have been elected to be accountable to manage. But looking at the times that we are in, it's very difficult because they're not paid, remember. And sometimes even they're changing rules that are changing now where someone can end up being accountable. It's becoming very, very challenging. So I would say we find ourselves in a very I mean, for the lack of better word, in an environment where we've got demand. The demand is so high, and of course the challenges also are so high. So overall, I would say yes, it's good to having platforms like this one where we all engage and deliberate. And yes, thank you.
Thanks, Opa. I mean, yeah, anybody who puts up their hand to be a trustee is a superhero in my book. I mean, I think it's a harder job. No, it's not actually. The ESCOM job is harder. You're not going to get a cup of cyanide delivered to you. Well, you might actually as a trustee. I think, yeah, the only difference between being a trustee on a body corporate or in a homeowners association and the ESCOM job is you get paid to do the ESCOM job.
Yes.
They're equally awful. They're equally awful jobs. We're running a bit against the clock here. A quick question to you, Marina. Property managers who want to position themselves from a legal point of view and be on the high road from a legal point of view to pass the muster of lawyers, rules, like yourself, how do they do it in the most efficient way possible?
Well, Bruce, I think there's no option but to take this high road on the fork that Dani was talking about. But they've got to enjoy the process. If they want the result and they want to be great and they want to be impeccable at what they do, there's no option but to enjoy the process as well. Otherwise, get out of the game. You know, it's really as simple as that. I think that education, as Vita was saying, is incredibly important. We've got to be a little bit careful. I wanted to just add about over-regulation. Over-regulation might be a critical issue to look at going forward. I mean, New South Wales, over-regulation, the Strata Act has been criticised there. And I think you don't want to get yourself into such a state where, you know, your hands are tied. So we need to look at that. Also, the one thing that I wanted to add was property managers from a legal point of view must be aware of the lay of the land. And currently in South Africa, like all over the world, in fact, you have a decline of the municipalities and an ascendance of homeowners associations and private bodies. So crucial to remember, because if you really take that high road and you position yourself correctly, then you're going to be in a powerful position going forward. I mean, in Hong Kong, the government is so scared of homeowners associations that they put surveillance cameras around homeowners associations because they're just worried about the balance of power. So if we're aware of those political sort of game playing situations, then I think you're going to be on the ball going forward.
Okay, no, that's great. We want government to be afraid of us. They're not. And so having government afraid of us would be a very good thing. Pearl, I was chatting to Johan the other day, and he was just saying to me that 80% of homeowners associations and 80% of the industry that supports it are taking the low road. And that's, I think, quite concerning. And I wonder how, I don't get all jargony, but how do you switch lanes? How do you get from that low road to the high road?
If I had an answer for you, I would have given it right now. The first thing that comes to mind is I'd like to move to Cape Town. Being a property manager over there seems much more lucrative than here in Pretoria. But I think we are slowly. I don't think moving into the 20% bracket is going to happen overnight. That's definitely not the situation. But with communication and with engaging with the clients and informing them of, what shall I call this, transformation, being better equipped, being better educated, we will get to that point finally. But I don't think it's an overnight thing. I think it will happen in time. So the plan, obviously, or the way to get there would be to engage, to get the support from the tools that Johan and Dani was talking about, to have that implemented and to guide your clients towards that, so that everyone can join on this journey to a better future.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Dani, a quick wrap up from you. Just summarize, please, your key insights from what we've been talking about for the last half hour or so in terms of this high road, low road scenarios and getting as many people sort of moving toward, even toward the high road, maybe is a good first step.
Yeah, Bruce, I think I'm sensing that there is an excitement. There's definitely this knowing that there's this opportunity, but then there's also the brunt of the challenge that we're currently sitting in. And I think there's two things that maybe that came to mind for me. The first is that there's this one part where managing agents can actually, or where they do not have control over. They don't have control, but they can influence. And I think to catch on what Vita and Marina said, legislation and this education and the professionalization is critical to make us more valuable. And what I heard loud and clear was we actually need to get involved in that process. We can't control it. We can't make ourselves, create education and regulation and change it tomorrow. But yes, through getting involved, you can have influence in order to make those relevant changes. The second thing is where you can look to the inside and say, what are the things that I can change today? What is within my means to make a decision and act today? And I think that is the upskilling, getting the right tools, starting the process to reposition yourself in front of your client. I think I hope that the graph kind of showed people where we are, because again, like your quote said, now we understand where we are. I think in the minds we felt like we way down, but we way down because we are now on our way up. All right. And a silver lining is 20% of the market already is showing us that it can be done. All right. So that's exciting. All right. And then something that was on that slide that I think some people maybe picked up, but this is really true. When we started the business, Bruce, in 2017, we had about 20%, minimum 20% of clients when we prospective clients, when we met them, they wanted a way out. They wanted to sell their business. All right. So they asked, listen, if you have anybody to buy, please let me know. Today, we're sitting with more than 10 companies that says, listen, I've got an open checkbook, I want to buy. And I think that says something of where we are in the industry and the change that has happened.
Thank you, Dani. Just one last comment, because we need to move on to the next part of the discussion. With all of the tech and all of the wondrous tools we can have, it's still a very human profession. And the role of the property manager is, with all of the tech, you have to then put your best face forward. You have no more excuses, correct?
100%.
I mean,
100%.
Okay,